be covering wormholes. 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 And if you don't know what wormholes are, they're a concept from physics, a theoretical concept that is a solution of Einstein's equations. And we're going to be going into what is the physics actually surrounding this, and how possible is it to actually travel all the way through one of these things. So without further ado, let's get into it. I just first want to start by saying that, throughout history, we've looked at certain things, and everything that certain things we've looked at points in time has seemed impossible until it's actually happened, right? Black holes, for example, in physics were something that were laughed at for a long time in the science community until they became proven fact, scientific fact. And even innovations of our age, the 21st century, cell phones, computers, internet, to people a couple hundred years ago, that would have seemed like something beyond this world, beyond possibility. So, a lot of what we're doing always on this channel is about expanding our capacity to conceptualize or interpret something with such profound nature, such as wormholes, that allow for something like, movement or travel between parallel universes, or time travel, or the ability to either travel forward or back in time. So, we're really talking about very complex principles here, but simplified in a way where we can interpret it and understand it, so that we have a greater understanding of the cosmos and a broadened imagination to conceptualize that which it is we're dealing with. So before we can create something, we must first imagine it, which is how everything in society was created. But I digress. Fact is, though, that wormholes are a solution of Einstein's equations, and we'll bust out our tappy marker here. But essentially, it allows for the creation of wormholes. And getting into kind of how physics looks at these, some physicists theorize that there could be wormholes constantly surrounding us right now, all around us, similar to how virtual particles do, that are left over from the Big Bang, like wormholes are left over from the Big Bang, but very microscopic ones, almost similar to micro black holes or primordial black holes. We would maybe term this as primordial wormholes, that are wormholes that are left over from the Big Bang, and we only need to provide energy to make them open. So, essentially, a lot of the concepts in physics allow for these creations of these portals, as I said, by Einstein's equations, and relativity allows for it. But one of the missing components with this equation is the presence of something called trans-dimensional energy, which will theoretically leak from one universe to another, also known as negative energy, or negative matter, or exotic matter. And this is something that would have anti-gravitational properties. If you try to, is similar to things like antimatter or dark energy. If you try to hold it in your hand, it go right through your hand. So the a decade ago, the concept of some type of matter that would anti-gravitate would be ridiculous, right? But now science is saying that 75% of the universe, or 73%, is dark energy, and 23% present is dark matter. And what are dark energy and dark matter? Invisible forces which we can't see or touch, which are all around us right now. And funny enough that this is a lot of times the way that we term magic, and that's termed M-A-G-I-C-K, not M-A-G-I-C, like pull a rabbit out of your hat magic. I'm talking about magic of energy affecting things in the field, energy affecting other energy in the field, and leading to the creation of things. So magic, what religion or ancient civilizations, what term is that? What does that fit the description of? Invisible energy, which we can't see or touch, which is all around us. So, similar to this concept of dark energy and dark matter, which is, one of the biggest concepts in today's world in physics. And essentially, the presence of this is similar to what would be necessary for holding up in a wormhole this trans-dimensional energy, which would have the properties of anti-gravitational properties to essentially repel the fabric of space and time in order to allow this dimensional rift or the space-time rift to stay open. In essence, when we talk about these concepts around wormholes, not only do we need to think of this missing factor, which we currently do not have, but we need to think of the logistics of things like dimensional travel, travel through spatial dimensions, travel through temporal dimensions, or any kind of parallel hyperspatial dimensions. So, one way to look at it is you have spatial dimensions, you have temporal dimensions, and you have hyperspatial dimensions. Or maybe I should term it as in, you have spatial aspects, you have temporal aspects, and you have dimensional aspects. So spatial relates to, like you see here, how many, like how you would depict something. Obviously, like a line is one-dimensional, something like a square is two-dimensional, something like a cube is three-dimensional, right? Those are the dimensions in which we can conceptualize and visualize within our physical reality here. In the essence of temporal dimensions, we typically have one that flows in one direction in the material reality. In higher dimensions, it might move traversably, meaning that it can move back and forth, or fluid-like, right? In essence, though, those are the two concepts which are the main ones, spatial and temporal dimensions. So, you have spatial, temporal, dimensional, or hyperspatial is meaning that there is some kind of unknown energy which tunnels through into almost this parallel reality where the laws of physics might operate different. So the laws of physics that we experience here do not bind realities that might exist in hyperspace. So keeping that in mind for the presence of understanding things like time travel, or any of these phenomenon we talk about here, understanding spatial, temporal, dimensional aspects of reality is imperative for us understanding the mechanics of time travel, because we are really talking about the concept of tunneling through into another aspect of reality, another fabric of reality even. As you see here, you can think of this as our universe, universe 1. And you could think here as universe 2. Now, a lot of times, the physics of it suggests that since these two universes vibrate on different levels, they appear invisible to one another, so they can never interact with one another. But theoretically, if one could go fast enough or create some kind of a rift, you can punch a hole right through the fabric of reality and connect this point, to this point, or this point, to infinite points. And this applies for the same concept of time travel. You're folding space and time to create this hyperspatial tunnel, or essentially you're tunneling through some higher dimension. So, like I described here, 1D, 2D, 3D, we can't visualize 4D because we do only live in 3 dimensions. So we can look down into 2 dimensions and 1 dimensions from 3D, but we can't look into higher dimensions. But what we can do is understand that between here, this space between the openings of the wormhole, you're tunneling through into perhaps 4 dimensions, 4D, and instantaneously when you enter one side, you appear out the other side because you're tunneling through some higher dimension and then returning into the 3-dimensional reality. So essentially, it's almost like if you want to think about like essentially say you're on a here, maybe let me illustrate actually, or here I'll just demonstrate. Say you're at this point on this line here, and this L shape is also here. If you were to, or here I'll draw it out actually. I wasn't planning on doing this. This is kind of a little bit improvised here. But say, when we're dealing with these dimensions, say you're dealing with 2-dimensional space here. You might be in a reality or in a universe that is here, right? These 2 dimensions are parallel to each other. Another dimension, and another dimension, and another dimension, out to infinity. And the only way to cross between these dimensions is if you had another dimension, which is what is going on here with 3D. So if you think about this concept of connecting the 2 realities through another spatial dimension, theoretically, what could happen is you could be able to create this type of rift. Obviously, if we're talking about 4 dimensions, then it would be this 3-dimensional shape inside rather than this 2-dimensional one, which I used to illustrate the example. But obviously, we cannot draw 4D. Essentially, though, that is the concept in which I have for you. I'll just leave that up actually. But that is imperative for us understanding this concept of what happens when we connect these dimensions through our modalities of using something like a wormhole, where we can perhaps tunnel right through the fabric of reality. So, in essence, when we talk about these dimensions, how might we create this type of rift? Now we come over here. I should have put my glasses on for this. There's a cosmic speed limit, which Einstein talked about here, which of course we know is the speed of light. And as you approach the speed of light, you come into contact with something known as the light speed barrier, which basically essentially means that when you move or approach the speed of light, all the dimensions that we talked about, all these spatial dimensions I drew out here on the board, they get all compressed against one another, because when an object moves faster, it has the ability to warp these dimensions, warp the nature or the fabric between the dimensions. So the faster something moves, the more it can warp reality. So, as one approaches this light speed barrier, or light speed, the light speed barrier causes the fabric of space and time to get compressed against each other. So these dimensions will come closer and closer towards each other, and you'll bend the fabric of space and time as you approach the speed of light, which is, of course, as we know, 299,792 kilometers per second, which essentially means that a beam of light can travel around the Earth 7 times in a second. So that is incredibly fast, but you would need to essentially overcome that speed in order to punch a hole right through the fabric of reality, in order to break through the light speed barrier. So that is one way of potentially creating a wormhole, which could lead to something like a jump to a parallel reality, another universe, or essentially traveling to another point in space or time. The other way to create a wormhole that physics now theorizes that might be plausible is to essentially utilize a black hole, but not just any black hole. It has to be a rotating black hole that has angular momentum. The concept around this is that if you have a rotating black hole, spinning black hole, and you fell into it at just the right trajectory, it could possibly act as the opening to a wormhole and transport you through space and time or to another parallel universe, parallel reality. So, that is essentially the crux of what I have for you today on the nature of wormholes. I might do a part 2 on this, seeing as wormholes are something pretty complex. I do believe I summed it up quite well in terms of illustrating what exactly is going on here. But essentially, Einstein's relativity plays into all these concepts. Essentially, if you have energy, or you have mass, or you have a speed, it is essentially acting as this aspect of existence that is bending the very nature of reality itself, because so much energy is acting on that point in space and time, or space-time. So it is imperative to understand this if we're going to understand this. So that is the majority of what I have for you today on wormholes. Again, there's so much we just don't know out there. You know, I always say this stuff, but I think a lot of times, even when I say this, I do not fully comprehend the full extent at which that impacts our perception, because very much so, it all depends on our ability to conceptualize that which is beyond our current comprehension, just to think outside the box of our current understanding and current comfortability to understand. Because if we are always thinking from what is known and not philosophizing or theorizing or creating some kind of hypothetical notion of what could possibly be true, we're never going to get to that aspect of exploring that thing, because it will always be that far away from us. Because if we do not change ourselves and the way we view reality, it cannot change. It will remain, what's the word I'm looking for? Immune to change, or immune to flux. It will remain immune to flux. And with that being said, to summarize, essentially, before you understand how we can utilize something like this, even if we had the potential to utilize it right now, with no machines or nothing, but just the act of conscious thought, the only thing that is a prerequisite to doing that is our ability to comprehend that concept, to let go of what we know up until this point, to discover what can now be possible, or what we can imagine now. Everything starts with imagination. Always remember that. That's what I have for you today. That's what the Prince of Mercury has for you today. So, as always, I encourage you to like and subscribe, share this video with friends and family, anybody who's into physics, spirituality, philosophy, expanding consciousness, any type of theories about the cosmos. It really does help support the channel. And, if we are going to take our world, or take our place in the world, and ensure that we move it to the reality that we want to come about, we must ensure that change by ensuring that what we see as valued in society continues to proliferate itself. So join me in that journey by helping expand this community, helping expand our outreach, and building that with me together. So you can follow me on Instagram, also at top_sorcerer. I will link all my links in the description below. I will link also my other channel, Moonstruck, where I have done extensive videos on wormholes and black holes. And that will be being uploaded on that channel in the coming weeks. And I encourage you once again to like, subscribe, to help support this platform, so I can continue to provide you guys with the best content possible, the most engaging content possible. Yeah, I do believe that is the crux of it. Just always remember that if you are to only get one thing out of this whole video, out of physics, whatever, remember that imagination is more valuable than anything else, more valuable than this physics, more valuable than anything science has ever created, more valuable than anything that has ever existed or will exist on this planet. Imagination is crucial. So, that is what I have for you today on the Sword of Mercury. Brought to you, of course, by the Prince of Mercury. And I will see you guys next time. Remember to like and subscribe. And thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time.